News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in the store for a tag. In the back it says USA.
Welcome to American Heartland. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. This week marks the third anniversary of the fatal helicopter crash that killed 30 American service members, including Navy SEAL Team 6, the very individuals who had killed Osama bin Laden, some of the nation's greatest heroes ever. 3 years have elapsed. A congressional investigation was nothing other than a sham and a cover-up, and the families still do not have the answers that they have been demanding. The families are waiting for further results. I actually corresponded with one family member, and he told me that they met with Pentagon officials, and they were not convinced that that second line of inquiry is going to breed any other results than the ones that they'd already been given, which is that they did not reveal or find any conclusive evidence that there was any kind of foul play, any kind of ambush in that helicopter crash. Many of the family members believe that those boys were set up either by the Afghans who were on that flight, the 7 Afghans who joined those American service members on that flight, or perhaps by Afghan commanders, or perhaps by our own commanders in some way, or perhaps from orders coming all the way directly from Washington, D.C. Well, we don't have the answers, and I hope that the family members continue to push for those answers. This week, we can at least remember the fallen, remember who they were, remember their virtues, their extraordinary qualities, their warrior skills. I want to commemorate all of them by reading a letter sent to Mr. Charlie Strange, celebrating his work as a father in trying to defend the rights of Michael Strange, who died in that helicopter crash. And here's the letter. Charlie and Maggie, I didn't want to let the week go by without expressing my sincere condolences on the loss of your dear son and nephew, Michael. Not having a son of my own, I cannot even begin to imagine what it must be like. I do have a nephew, however, who means the world to me, and I don't know what I would do if anything ever happened to him. For you, Charlie, it must be like a nightmare from which you can never awaken. It's hard to believe that 3 years have already passed. However, you have come so far and accomplished so much in those 3 years. I can hardly go anywhere in these river wards without people knowing the name Michael Strange. I suppose that is what it's all about when we lose someone. We don't want them to be forgotten. We want them to continue to live on in the consciousness of the community. The work you have done has certainly assured that Michael Strange will never be forgotten. I guess many fathers would have chosen to live out their days in a semi-conscious, disheartened state, and no one would ever really blame them for that. But you, sir, you decided to fight for justice and for answers for Michael. You took on the Washington establishment, the United States military, and even the president and vice president, while at the same time establishing a foundation in Michael's name so that others could find some degree of healing, peace, and comfort. You have set the bar incredibly high for all future fathers who lose a son in battle. While no one can bring Michael back, it is certainly important to those who knew him and loved him to know that his death was not in vain. His family and friends want and need to believe that some good came from his tragic passing. The work that you have done in bringing to light the sinister circumstances of August 6, 2011, and that fateful mission appropriately named Extortion 17 are now part of the public debate. Who knows what the future will bring in terms of accountability, but thanks to your efforts on behalf of Michael, people now know that the Extortion 17 mission was not what we were told. We now know that our government lied to us about that mission and that young American soldiers needlessly died. Michael Strange will never truly be gone. He lives on through spectacular mural in Port Richmond, through his benevolent foundation that bears his name, through the many articles that have been written about him, and in the hearts and the minds of his amazing family. And even though we can no longer see him or hear his voice, he will always be young and he will always be smiling, that one-of-a-kind Michael smile. God bless. I am certain that so many of the family members are receiving similar letters. And I say this with a heavy heart, with somebody who knows what it means to have lost someone that I love dearly. I've had the unfortunate circumstance of having lost both my parents, my father when I was 21, my mother when I was in my late 30s. And I understood what the word loss truly means. That's the feeling that, as though you're trying to reach out your hand all around you, trying to grab onto something, and that something just isn't there. And that's what loss is. I never quite understood what it means to mourn. And over time, what I realized is mourning, it doesn't really ever end, because that sense of loss is with you always. If that person was dear to you, you always feel as though you're reaching out your hand for something that isn't there. You can't quite ever grasp it ever again. And a part of you is gone too. And I'm talking about someone who lost parents. I can imagine that that sense of loss is all the greater when it comes to having lost a child, because losing a child is turning the world upside down. It's turning the natural order upside down. So my sympathy, my heart, my soul bleeds really for those families that, again, are remembering August 6th and every day are dealing with the consequences of that loss. Now, for these families, the pain is greater than, say, just my pain at having lost people that I love. It's much greater because they are convinced that the case is not closed. They do not believe that those were simply soldiers, and I shouldn't use the word simply because that's wrong of me. They weren't soldiers who died in battle, however heroic and grand and great that is. No, they are convinced that these young men did not need to die. They shouldn't have died. And even if you say, let's put all the conspiracy theories aside, let's put all the sense that something really, really sinister happened. Let's just put that aside for 1 minute. If you just look at this as a matter of competence, it shouldn't have happened. They were on the wrong plane. They should not have been grouped together. You do not put America's most valued assets, so many of them, all on one plane like that. And you certainly do not send them into conflict without the ability to fire back when they're shot at. So even from the pure level of the mission, was it a well-crafted, well-thought-out mission with the proper resources? The answer is a stinging, biting no. This was a colossal failure. And so the pain of these family members is all the greater because they truly believe that this sacrifice was in vain. It should not have happened. It need not have happened. And I don't think it can really fully lay this story to rest until we go deeper and until justice is served. Now, one of the things I did before coming on the air is I browsed the website, which has a list of all of those young men. And you can also see their pictures. And when you see the pictures of these young men, you cannot help but say, wow, how formidable they were. You can go to American Thinker, and Thomas Moriarty has a piece, and in that piece there's a link to these photos, and you can see who they were, and you can look at what, the pictures that the family members sent representing them. And one thing that kept flashing through my mind as I saw these incredible young men, I would be so thrilled if my daughter brought any one of them home, any one of their like home, and said, Mom, this is the man I fell in love with. This is the man I want to marry. This is the man I want to be the father of my children. They are impressive. They're not just physically impressive. Some of them have this big beaming smile and they radiate wholesomeness. Others look so committed to their mission. And we know from what the family members have told us, so many of them were the best in the world at what they did. So they are brimming not just with bravery and strength and all the physical attributes we generally attribute to warriors, but they are brimming with talent galore. They could have used this talent to do anything they wanted to do. They could have used it in business. They could have used it in the mass media. In other words, they could have used that talent to enrich themselves, to improve the immediate lives, their own immediate lives and that of their families. But instead, what did they decide to do with that talent? They decided that they were going to give that talent to the United States military. They were going to give that talent to their country, to serve their country, not merely hoard the talent for themselves, but give that talent. And wow, what success they had, especially the members of Navy SEAL Team 6. Can you imagine being one of those parents who got a call at some point after it was known that Osama bin Laden had been killed? Now, this Navy SEAL Team 6 operates in strict secrecy, but the parents have let it be known that it was confirmed to them by their sons that, yes, they were the ones who had taken down America's public enemy number one. So think about how these men chose to use that talent to destroy one of the most evil men in the world, a man who is wreaking havoc not only with the people he sends to die, but also the victims of those jihadists who have killed. So can you imagine how proud as a parent you would be if that was your child? How he obviously succeeded to the point that he was hailed as a member of an elite force. And then think of the next success, not just being part of the elite force, but committing an act that will go down in history, taking down Osama bin Laden. And yet, despite all that pride and all that joy that all of these service members brought to their family, regardless of whether they were in Navy SEAL Team 6, in August, a nightmare for so many of those families ensued. Somebody knocked on the door and had to deliver the news. Your son is gone. And I think some of the parents, they're trying to fight back. But what I'm sensing is they feel that nobody is listening anymore, that the story was a novelty, and the novelty has passed, and who cares now? Well, one of the things that I would like to say today is that I still care. And I know that so many members of American Heartland still care. And I know so many Americans out there still care. And usually when it comes to this kind of a travesty, the answers don't necessarily come quickly. But I still firmly believe that those answers will come. When I look at the pictures of those young men with those beautiful, beaming eyes, I cannot help but say a silent prayer. Lord, help us to get the answers and let justice be served.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
The music, the moment you own it, you better never let it go. You only get one shot, do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. You better lose yourself in the music.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. And many of you know that I am also the wife of one tough cookie, one formidable man, and that is Jeff Cooner. He has taken the state of Massachusetts by storm. This week, a huge victory for him and for everybody who came out in great numbers at a rally protesting illegal immigration. That rally was held in the middle of the summer on a hot day, and a message was sent to the governor. And that is, we do not want the unaccompanied minors to be housed in this state. The answer is no. And this week, it has been announced that Cooner Country, as the fans of his show are known, and everybody who came out at that rally, their voices were heard. Those minors will not be housed in this state. Now, Governor Patrick has said that the federal government has told him that they have found other facilities and therefore it won't be necessary to house those children in the state. But I don't believe that that's exactly what happened. I think the truth is more along the lines that they got punched in the face, they got punched in the gut by the American people, and they had to find a face-saving way to back out of a policy that was going to be disastrous for the Democratic Party in this state. They knew that. They got loud protests from their own party members as well as the American people, and they had no choice but to back down. Today I want to play a little clip of how Jeff Cooner thinks, of what Jeff Cooner thinks really happened in a key phone call between Governor Deval Patrick and President Barack Obama. Roll
Here
it.
in the state. Ding, ding. Suddenly, the White House gets a call. Hello, it's President Obama. There a letter. President, Mr. Dear Leader?
Yeah, is that Deval? Is that you, Deval?
It's me. I got a problem here. I got a real problem.
What's the problem? I don't get it. Calm down. What's the problem? Hold on, Valerie, David, come here. Dad Pfeiffer, come in here, guys. Come here. Son, I got Deval here. Apparently he's all nervous. Hold on. Okay, I got you on the speaker. Go ahead. Mini-me. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm looking at these poll numbers, and they don't want this plan to shelter all these your voters. I'm sorry, I mean the unaccompanied minors, the children, our voters. Sorry, your voters, no, the unaccompanied minors. They're angry. They're angry in Cape Cod. They're angry in Chicopee. They're angry everywhere, and even in Lynn and in Chelsea and in Boston, and they're really okay. Calm down. What do you mean they're mad? What are we talking about?
It's Massachusetts. I thought this is a liberal state. I thought you told me this was a slam dunk. Deval, you told me this was a slam.
I know, I thought so, and it was supposed to be, and it's a blue state, and we have the media in our pocket, and the Democratic Party, and but there's this guy Jeff Cooner.
Okay, all right, it's one guy. Just take care of him.
No, he held this rally, and there were 10,000 people up at the State House protesting. 10,000. It was in the middle of the summer.
10,000. Oh my God, that's a big number. Valerie, what the hell? What the hell do we do? Oh, hold on. Valerie says, call him a racist. Just call him a racist. Call him a nativist. You know the game. Come on, play the race card. We've been doing it our whole careers.
No, but there's this problem. I don't know how to say this.
Well, just say it. Get out with it. Deval, just say it.
He's a legal immigrant.
What the hell? What do you mean he's a legal immigrant? What do you mean he's a legal immigrant?
So, message delivered, message sent, and message delivered. Don't mess with a legal immigrant, because a legal immigrant knows what it means to follow the law. And a legal immigrant knows what the opposite is, not following the law. You know, I want to congratulate every single person who doesn't accept corruption, who doesn't accept complacency, who doesn't accept the status quo and says, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to join a group. I'm going to go out and protest. Because you know what we have seen, even in a blue state where many conservatives think it is hopeless, we see that it is never hopeless. The fight to protect this country is never hopeless. And in fact, even in a blue state, the people have had a string of key victories. And this inspires me, and I hope that it inspires every single person out there to believe that if we agitate, if we band together, we can ultimately be victorious in restoring this nation to its better self. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that if you look at what has happened in Massachusetts recently, you've seen the growth of a movement that is sick and tired of an elite that seems completely disenchanted with the needs and the wants of the folks. And I hope that this is going to inspire movements across the country. I hope that this really lights a fire in everybody's belly out there, because we know that the president's policies have failed, and it is time for us to reclaim the leadership of this country. The first challenge for us going forward is to be able to gain control of the House and win control of the Senate in the midterm elections. Now, I want to emphasize that even though right now the polls are showing that it is in our favor at this time, the enthusiasm is all on the Republican side, and the Democrats are having a very, very hard time ginning up their base. Even though it looks at this moment very promising, I want to emphasize that it is by no means certain that we are going to win. And why do I say that? I say that because, understand this, the Democratic grassroots machine is light years ahead of the Republican grassroots machine in terms of getting voter turnout. There was an interesting piece in the Washington Post which is exploring what are Democrats going to do to get their base to vote. Well, they're going to do what they did in 2012. Remember, in 2012, many of the conservative analysts were saying, look, it looks like Romney's going to win this thing. And I'm talking about people that crunch the numbers on a daily basis like Karl Rove, they were stunned when Obama ended up winning that election. And in the analysis that followed, lots of folks talked about how the Republicans failed to turn out members of their base. And that's true. But one of the key things that I don't think many conservatives and Republicans grasp is how effective the new techniques of the Democrats are. What is it that the Democrats do? They are able to target specific groups with a specific message, and they are using all of the latest technology to do so. They have an electoral machine that is like a fine-tuned engine. So they are going to pitch a narrative to specifically to young women to try to get them out to vote, to Hispanics to try to get them out to vote, to the young to get them out to vote, to the African Americans to get them out to vote. And they are so sophisticated that they know how to zero in on the key demographic group in the key area that they need to battle a specific challenge, say to a Senate seat in the South, for example. So, do not underestimate how effective the Democratic machine is. And you know why it's easy to underestimate it? Because to many conservatives, we look at that kind of strategy and we go, oh, this is so darn transparent. The American people are going to see through that. Oh, they're playing the race card. Isn't that so transparent? Oh, they're playing the woman card. Isn't that so cheap and easy? Oh, they're playing the immigration card. Doesn't everybody see through that? Unfortunately, all of these cards are extremely effective. And what many Republican strategists don't quite get, it's some of this messaging is targeted on a minutia level at a local group in a specific local constituency. That's why I emphasize this. The Democratic machine is light years ahead of the Republican Party. So, we are encouraged by some of the polls out there. The president's popularity is an all-time low. The Republican enthusiasm is at an all-time high. But can we translate these numbers into victory in November? And there's only one way we are going to do that. We need to marshal all of our resources, and especially some of the latest technology, using social media, for example, in the same targeted way that Democrats are using all of the resources at their disposal to turn out the vote. It doesn't matter what the overall poll numbers say if the people do not show up at the polls. And that's why what we need to see this November is the same kind of determination in every district, on every American street that we have seen here in the state of Massachusetts. It has to be all hands on deck. Everybody has to participate in this. Because a couple of talk show hosts, a couple of analysts, a couple of polls, and just leaving it in the hands of the Republican Party, it's not going to happen. It didn't happen in 2012. And I want you to think about this. To lose in 2012, when the economy was so bad, when the president had no record to run on, following an attack on our compound in Benghazi, which we had lost an ambassador, to lose under those circumstances means that your party machine is a freaking zero. It's a zero. And so again, if we are going to succeed, don't count on the pundits. Don't count on the talk show hosts. Don't count on the media. The only way that we're going to succeed in getting a larger majority in the House and reclaiming the Senate, and ultimately showing President Obama who's boss, there's only one way that's going to happen, and we have to do it ourselves. And I'm talking to you, and you, and you, and you. Every single person who listens to this show, every single person on social media, you're going to have to do it yourself. You're going to have to pick up a shovel and start digging. Because I can tell you one thing that I've learned. The Republican machine is ineffective, almost like everything else about the Republican Party. The only thing that works in this country are the people. You're listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. And I'm saying let's enjoy the summer before we get ready for the biggest fight of our lives.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
There's no going back.
Welcome to American Heartland. You are listening to Dr. Grace, and I'm going to try to get everybody in fighting form for the midterm elections. This time, take nothing for granted. And you know, I got to be honest, one of the things I took for granted in 2012 was I thought so much of what the Democrats were saying was idiotic. And I thought it wasn't going to work. And to my shock, so much of that messaging worked. And one of the things I learned is never underestimate how stupid some voters can be. Do you remember when the Democrats rolled out this thing about Julia? What the government does for Julia. And that was part of their whole campaign on war on women. And it shows Julia getting a government grant almost every step of the way in her life. I went on the air and I said, oh my goodness, this is one of the most anti-feminist, most insulting videos I've ever seen. I think every woman that looks at this is going to reject it. Every woman is going to throw up. It's actually going to turn them off and they're not going to go to vote. And I was wrong. I was dead wrong. That messaging worked. The messaging that appeals to the lowest common denominator, the basest instincts of the American people, it works. And what I realized from that experience is the United States has changed. There's a segment of our population that to me is unrecognizable. I don't recognize that. I don't relate to you. If that stupid Julia video works on you, I do not relate to you. If this project of ceaseless government dependency works on you, I can't relate to you. You know what? I can't relate to you. But now I've learned a lesson. I'm never going to underestimate you again. Listen very carefully to what the Democrats are doing. Listen to those dog whistles. Remember, they're always saying that it's the Republicans and it's the conservatives that have all these dog whistles in elections, when in reality it's them. Listen to their dog whistles. Listen to Juan William on Fox News Sunday, and you can begin to hear the Democratic strategy for the midterms. Listen to Juan.
Well, all I can do is look at the numbers. If you look at the core constituency, the people who are in, let's say, Tea Party opposition, support of impeachment, there's no diversity. It's a white, older group of people. As to whether or not it's racial, you know, look, as President Obama and others have said, there's some people who don't like him because of his race, some people who do like him. But I would say, if you just break it down as a matter of political analysis and say, who is this group? It reminds me that the Republican Party has become almost a completely white party.
Whoa, do you hear that dog whistle? Do you remember that in 2012, they convinced African Americans that Republicans were determined to suppress the vote? And they came out in big numbers because they were making a statement, you're not going to suppress my individual vote. And so many of them waited in line for hours and hours and hours. And when they were interviewed, they said, well, what made you wait in line so much? Well, it's because the Democratic messaging on them was very effective. They feared that their vote was going to be taken away from them. And it got them to the polls, no matter how preposterous the rest of us thought that message was. No matter how idiotic we thought that dog whistle was. But this one seems just as nutty. Juan Williams is saying that not just the Republicans in Congress, but Republicans all over the country are profoundly racist. And what that's really saying is they're out to get the black man in the White House. He says it even more clearly in this clip.
Core constituency, the people who want him impeached, they're almost all white and they're all older. And guess what? They're all in the far right wing of the Republican Party.
And he might as well have just said, and they're all racist. That's ridiculous.
So what else? What else is he saying? They're also trying to say to us, not only are we going to use this impeachment to drum up our base, to get them out to vote, not only are we going to pit the races against each other, we're going to try to get the blacks and Hispanics to band together against the white folks who are holding them down. That's that dog whistle. Not only that, but if you dare go for impeachment, we are going to present this as an act of racism, an act of lynching a black man. Only instead of lynching him in the streets, you're lynching him from the White House, from the highest pinnacle of power in this country. So the Democratic strategy is beginning to unfold right before our eyes. They're trying to neutralize the impeachment campaign by tagging it as racist before it gets off the ground. I wouldn't underestimate how effective that is. Because what is going to happen are many white folks are going to say, I don't know, this kind of rhetoric, it scares me. I don't know. Why don't we just sit tight and wait for this president to ride out his term? Let him have his moment. Let's just lay low. That's what the Democrats are hoping to achieve. Get Republicans to lay low so that they can at least hold on to the Senate and try to salvage something from the rest of this presidency. And we need to be ferocious in calling them out on their cheap tricks. I really admire how Michael Needham, who is sitting right next to Juan William, immediately called him out and said, you know what? You keep saying that we are demonizing the president, but what have you just done? You have demonized a whole group of people that you don't even know. And you have said their regard for the Constitution is irrelevant. Their regard for the laws of the land are irrelevant. Their regard for the presidency is irrelevant. The only thing you see is that there's something evil lurking in their heart, and you can pronounce that. And you are going to say that everything that they are doing is driven by this base impulse of racism. I'm really glad that Michael Needham called him out on that, because so many people who are becoming politically active, some for the very first time, the last thing on their mind is what color of skin the president has or doesn't have. What they care about is protecting the laws of the land. And it is crystal clear that the president of the United States is exceeding the limits of his power, the limits of the power given to him by the Constitution. In fact, he says so flagrantly. He tries to make it a virtue that he's exceeding those powers. How dare Juan Williams presume to know the motives in the hearts of people who are calling for impeachment? Why demonize them? Because he is in lockstep with the Democratic strategy. Label, 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 label. And you know what the most effective labels are? The labels that you can't argue against. How are you going to argue definitively what you can't feel, hear, see, and touch, which is what's in somebody's heart and mind? All they can continue to say to their base is, trust me, trust me, trust me. What's really behind this is they don't like people with darker skin, and they want to keep people with darker skin down. You can't argue against that. In fact, I once wrote a column and say the best thing that we can do in this country is to stop talking about race altogether. because it's a losing argument. You can't win on that argument. Somebody who wants to level that race card, they're not looking to reach a consensus with you. They're not looking to have a rational discussion with you. They're not looking to be swayed by logic. They are looking to neutralize you. They want to diminish your role in the public sphere. And my advice is, let's be frank about race relations in this country. I got to be perfectly honest. I have not met anybody that I've literally known that I can say is a racist. You know why? Because racism, by and large, is an out-of-date concept. It means this. It means that you believe that some people are inherently, biologically inferior to others. I don't know anybody today who believes that. What I do know are people who think that some cultures are superior to others. And they might think, look, I think American culture, I think the American Constitution, I think the American Republic is superior to other republics around the world. Yes. And there's nothing to be ashamed of if you believe in the cultural superiority of an institution or even of a group of people. So I do think that there's lots of folks out there who say, I'm proud of American culture. I think that there's a way of doing things, whether it is the defense of capitalism or the defense of democracy, that is superior to how other people do it in the rest of the world. That's a discussion about culture, and it's a legitimate one. But race has become an irrelevant concept. Because there used to be a time when some of the leading scientific minds really believed that some people were biologically inferior to others. That's all passé. Nobody believes that now. But lots of us believe that there are some elements in some cultures that are superior. They have to be defended vigorously. So my advice to everybody out there, when the Democrats start talking about race, don't engage in that discussion, because it only fuels they are framing the debate. It only fuels that discussion, a discussion that nobody can win because it's based on something irrational where there's no arbiter. When they start playing the race card, what I recommend is you play the culture card. Be specific. If they say something like, whites really want to impeach the president because deep down they are racist, we bring it down to specifics. Excuse me, Juan. What does the Constitution say about what the president is allowed to do? Does the Constitution say that he is permitted to rewrite laws? And so on the specifics, on a defense of the law, on a defense of culture, we have the higher ground, and we will ultimately bring the American people with us. But in order to do so, it is imperative not to fall into the trap of race talk, because that's all that is. It's one nasty net. It will entangle anybody who engages in it and break them down with specifics and with clarity and with confidence in the American culture. You're listening to Dr. Grace, upholding values that never die.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. And you know what? For Heidi Klum and Mel B on NBC's America's Got Talent, it's raining men. I just wrote a piece. It came out this week. It's called The Latest Celebrity Media Trend, Inappropriate Behavior by Female Cougars. These two judges on America's Got Talent, they are women in their late 30s, early 40s. And they are going gaga, and I mean gaga, over the young men. In fact, their behavior is absolutely disgusting to the point that they are flirting with the young men on stage. And I want you to listen to this clip. It is so appalling that even Howard Stern is shocked that Heidi Klum was flirting with men far, far younger than her. Children, essentially, teens, kids that could actually be her own children. Listen to this.
Heidi, what did you think?
I think that the two of you are very talented. I really enjoyed it, especially your face expressions.
I would almost swear that Heidi is flirting with you.
Might have been flirting just a little bit.
A little bit. How old are you guys, 18, 19?
17. I'm 18, though, so it means...
You're not that much younger than her boyfriend. Mel B.
You made tap cool, so it's definitely different. I think the girls are going to go crazy for you, and you're talented.
You know what? This is just unbelievable behavior from these two ladies. They are crossing a line. They are crossing a line. If men behaved in the same way that they did, it would be written up all over the place that they were actually sexually harassing some of the contestants. You have Heidi Klum flirting with 17 and 18-year-olds, and she even admits to doing so, and she's supposed to be an impartial judge. You have Mel B. There was one singer in particular, Miguel Dakota. She's fanning herself when he's on stage. And you know, shortly after I wrote this article, this week on America's Got Talent, there was this really cute segment about a magician. And for years, his grandmother was his greatest supporter. So they do this little package before he goes on stage and he's in the quarterfinals. Then the magician comes on and he does his act. And he said that he's going to dedicate that whole performance to this lovable grandmother of his. When he's finished with that, do you know what Mel B says in her judgment of the performance? He made magic hot. And she uses that word over and over again when she's analyzing the male contestants. These two women, their behavior is so out of control that even Howard Stern, now please sit back and think about that for a while. Howard Stern, one of the biggest perverts in the United States of America. I mean, I can't think of two bigger perverts in the mass media than Hugh Hefner and Howard Stern. Even Howard Stern, in behind-the-scenes footage, is calling these two women cougars. And you know what? Instead of them being ashamed at their behavior, they laugh. And they think that this reveals that they are timeless in their sexual vibrance. They are buying another lie that is being peddled by the mass media, that age doesn't matter. This is another liberal fiction. Age is irrelevant. And these women believe that they are being pioneers in the feminist movement because they're doing what men used to do. Men would ogle women openly. Now, they may still do it, but they're generally criticized for it if they do it in public. They would sexually harass women with impunity. They would talk about women exclusively based on their looks and on their specific body parts. And they would date and marry younger women with no social consequences. So many of these women believe that if they behave the same way, they're being pioneers as feminists. And the media is celebrating this trend. How did this trend get rolling? Well, it was made popular by some leading actors and actresses. Think of these couples: Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher, Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins, Madonna and Guy Ritchie, Halle Berry and Gabrielle Aubry, Melanie Griffith and Antonio Banderas, and now most recently you've got Mariah Carey and Nick Cannon. Many of these celebrities popularized this idea that if you're an older woman, it is really chic to have a boy toy on your arm. And the media is trying to lead us to believe that this is how we equalize the sexes and this is how we further the movement of female liberation. In fact, nothing can be further from the truth. Have you noticed that in my list of all of these couples, none of those relationships succeeded? The only two that are still together in that group is Nick Cannon and Mariah Carey. And the book has still to be written on them. I'd be willing to take bets on how long that relationship is going to last. And why do so many of these May-December romances ultimately collapse? You know why? Because age does matter. Age matters. Of course it does. That's common sense. At every single age in our lives, we are going through a specific stage. And when you have a partner that's in a different stage of life, it's bound to result in numerous conflicts and irresolvable conflicts. Let me give you one example. Oh, it was so chic when Demi Moore was dating Ashton Kutcher, a man so much younger than her. It was so chic, said the media. Well, guess what? After several years together, Ashton Kutcher had the inexplicable, undeniable urge to have a child of his own. And Demi Moore tried and tried and tried to give him that child. She tried everything. And she has money galore. Every single technique that money could buy. And you know what? Even money couldn't help. She could not get pregnant. And ultimately, that was a key factor that led the young man to say, I'm going to end this relationship. I'm going to leave this woman. And I'm going to find a woman that can bear me children. Demi, does age matter? Of course it matters. And it's not just such a stark example of what we can and cannot do biologically. It's how we think. Every stage of our life results in a different thought pattern, different interests, different loves and hates. And when somebody is in a completely different stage, it's a recipe for constant conflicts. So here we have another stupid liberal idea going down in flames. And I'm calling them out on it. And I'm also saying, remember that feminists taught women, don't judge yourself on sex and looks. We need to be emancipated from that. And instead, what are Heidi Klum and Mel B doing? Are they convincing us that they can actually captivate the attention of a 17 and 18-year-old indefinitely? Oh, yeah, maybe for a short time. But indefinitely? Oh, no. They look like middle-aged fools, and that's what they are. Instead of embracing all of the wisdom and experience and all that they have going for them in their age, right now, as a 39-year-old, as a 41-year-old, they can be beautiful, they can be captivating, and they can be truly free if they embraced who they are, instead of chasing the ghost of their youth, chasing the ghost of their former selves. That's not freedom. That's pathetic. And feminists taught us that we were more than merely objects, good enough to be ogled, good enough to have sex with in our youth and then discarded later. Well, if that's truly the case, why are Mel B and Heidi Klum identifying themselves in that same game, putting themselves in that same trap? Ladies, we freed ourselves from that hole that we were buried in. Nowadays, we are more than our body parts, and we are seen as such. We are more than what we can do in our youth, and we are generally recognized as such. What Heidi Klum and Mel B are doing on America's Got Talent, on primetime television, it isn't only disgusting, it is actually taking the feminist cause backwards. We were free from the trap of sex and looks, and this new cougar trend is trying to put us back in there. And I'm saying, not me, no way. You're listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. And once again, I'm upholding values that are never, ever going to die, no matter what the airheads in the media are trying to do.
I was born by God's dear grace in an extraordinary place.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.